Good evening, everyone, and welcome to NBC6 Voices on our Facebook and YouTube pages. I'm Jawan Strader. Well, tonight, many of us will watch Olympic gymnast Simone Biles compete on the balance beam after withdrawing from last week's team all-around final and a number of individual finals as well. She's experienced something called the twisties, something that a gymnast experiences when they can't tell up from down. But this prompted Biles to leave the Olympic competition as well as to focus on her mental health. Now, we've been seeing more athletes talk about mental health as they take a step back from the spotlight and even sometimes duties in order to compete. Athletes like Naomi Osaka, Serena Williams, Taco Fall, and Sha'Carri Richardson, to name a few, have all been outspoken about their mental health. And we want to let you know that throughout this show, you can always go online. You can see here at the bottom of your screen as well. We're going to be throwing up hotline numbers throughout the show in order for you out there to know that you have a resource. If you need anyone to talk to, if you need any type of help, we want to make sure that we guide you. So the numbers will be out on the bottom of our screen throughout the show. So let's talk about it. Here with me today is former Dolphins player Akin Ayodele and team director and head coach of Park Avenue Gymnastics, Kathy Seamock. I can't believe I just jacked that up, Kathy. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. So, okay, Akin, I want to start with you because you're a former NFL player. Could you relate to when you heard Simone Biles talk about not the twisties, but talk about mental health in regards to athletes?
Yeah, I think that's when the conversation has started over the last, actually a couple of years. And what's interesting is now that you have these athletes who are really at the prime of their careers, really having a conversation and coming out boldly and wanting us to really discuss this. We can all relate. I think as a former athlete, as a former football player, now that I say, post-career, I've dabbled into golf, and you can compare what she's talking about into the yips. And while a lot of male athletes and golfers can relate to the yips, and we have sympathy for those who have that. We see professional golfers that go through that. For some reason, there's a stigma about an Olympian or a individual athlete who really is having the same mental blockage or living and replaying memories in their head. And so, yes, we can all relate to that. We understand what they go through because there's no worse place to be than to be in your head if you're not confident enough to know that you can get the job done.
Amen. And Kathy, I want to bring you into this conversation as well. When it first broke about Simone not moving forward with the competition, matter of fact, you saw it happen. You saw her do a routine and you knew something was off. I want to know what was going through your mind, and did you understand it at the time?
Well, when she first vaulted, you could see as she left the table that something wasn't quite right. So you could see that there was an issue coming off the table. So, and also in warm-ups, if you watched warm-ups, the touch warm-up, she only did a 1.5 twist. And I saw that and I was like, wow, that's kind of weird. And then when she competed, same thing, the timing was a little bit off the table and the twist was a little bit off. So you definitely saw it coming. Was I surprised that she pulled out at first? Absolutely. Because again, she's Simone Biles. She's this high level athlete. She's the top of her game. But do I completely understand that she was lost in space and she does really hard stuff? And so when you're lost in space doing really hard stuff, it's like it's a physical danger. I understand why she pulled out, but of course, at first, everybody was like, "What? What's going on? Come on, you gotta pull it together." And everybody expects her to pull it together because she's Simone Biles.
But Kathy, with that said, because you and I, we were talking before we began here, and you said before, like years before this, when people would get the so-called the twisties, they would still go out and compete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean. It really depends on levels. I'm sure at the elite level, the Olympic level, they were pushed to keep going. I think when you're talking about the lower level athletes or club athletes, like I work with, and even in college, I think usually you just try to water down. And that's what happens when you get these twisties or you get lost in space. The goal is to water down. But when you're Simone Biles, you can't water a triple twisting double back down to a double twisting double back. You have to back it up to a single flip or a double flip with no twists. And when she does that, then she's not competitive anymore. And I think that's really where the big thing is. But yeah, in the past, I'm sure at the elite level, it was like, go, you got to go. It's the Olympics, you got to go. So I think that there's a little bit of difference in how things were run then and how things are run now. The athletes now have a bigger voice in what they do and being comfortable and saying, hey, I can't do this right now. In the past, in the Marty years, there was no way they had that opportunity.
Well, I want to talk to the both of you, you and Akin, about mental health in regards to being an athlete, because Akin, I'm sure you play one of the toughest positions in football. And when I say toughest positions, I'm talking about linebacker. So your risk of injury is very high. So when you're going through injuries or you're going through some sort of pain or you're going through the game, the mental aspect of things can take a toll. But of course, you're supposed to be a hard football player. You're an NFL player. You're not supposed to worry about anything, or nothing's supposed to impact you. But it does. And so I want to hear from you, about both of you, about the mental health part of things. Can you relate to what Simone is talking about mentally, Akin?
Absolutely. Personal story. I think that's what we all live through, is our own experiences. And as a former athlete, it's traditionally, just to your point, Juwan, you're pushed to the brim and you're pushed to give of yourself more than you would realize. And there's a natural balance there. And generally, you get to a place in your career, in your workouts, in practice, where you know what you can give. But at times also there's a lot of pressure, and there's an outside force. There's your coaches, there's your teammates, there may be family. And so you have this external pressure that, whether it's real or not, you feel obligated, to continue to perform. Personal for me, I remember, here my time with Miami, in which nobody knew this as far as fans and media, but I played an entire season with just one leg. And I had drop foot. I had a nerve issue on my back, and which completely shut down the nerve, and I couldn't stand on my right leg. But because of those pressures that you feel, and because of the memories and you feeling that if you don't perform, if you don't go in the game, that you're letting a lot of people down. And you go through things and you put yourself through these situations to come home and question everything that you are, everything that you've ever done. Because at the end of the day, you know that you're judged and you're measured by your last performance. And if it's not up to par, it affects your confidence. It affects your mind. It affects your ability just to feel that you are worthy of a space or a friendship. And so you live through that as a professional athlete most of your career.
And Kathy, Akin touched on it a little bit, talking about carrying that weight, and Simone even touched on it, and those around her talking about how she had the weight of the world on her shoulders, especially the country, because that's all everyone was talking about was Simone Biles.
Excuse me.
So mentally, as an athlete, and you've been doing this you've been coaching for 29 years. So you've seen some of these athletes, you come in touch with them, but you've competed yourself. So talk about that mental aspect, and can you relate?
I can't relate on the professional sports level. I competed for a small Division I school. I had fear. I think I had a healthy respect for fear. And I also had a healthy respect for what I could and couldn't do. But there came a point in time when I was a senior in college, and there were just certain things I just said to my coach, I'm not doing those anymore. And we found a way around it and did other skills. And that's what we try to do with our athletes as well now. So there are certain athletes that maybe fear going backwards. So we try to do more things forward. We try to work around the rules to allow them to be successful where they're at. There's always pressure, but I think in gymnastics, and I don't know, I guess it happens in all sports, but in gymnastics, these kids put a lot of pressure on themselves. It's a sport of perfection. It is judged based on a 10. So either you're perfect or you're not perfect. So they put a lot of pressure on themselves, whether it's, great or good or bad. A lot of times they're not satisfied anyways. So
perfect or not perfect. And you know what? That's a good point, because it's a scale. It's perfect or not perfect. But because of the way the world is now and everything, you're judged. You are judged.
yes.
You are judged. So mentally, when you do have an athlete come to you, maybe in tears because of what they're dealing with before, it's like, get out there, you do it. Get out there, you go out and compete. How do you deal with that athlete that comes to you in tears? Because I'm sure you've seen it. You've seen it before.
Yes. I mean, and old school days, again, I've been doing this a long time. Yeah, get out there and do it. That's the way we learn to coach. Nowadays, it is different. And there's a different level of patience that we have with the athletes. And I have an athlete today and yesterday that kind of came to me and said, Kathy, I'm struggling twisting. Okay, well, let's back it up. I usually ask them, how many times did you go before you came to me? And usually it's more than they should have, 3 or 4 times, and they should have come to me right away. But okay, let's back it up. And then you move forward again. And I think that's really the big thing with Simone. She had trouble and there was no place for her to back it up. You can't necessarily back it up on hard mats. You need a soft surface to back it up. And thankfully that's what we have. And I have a pretty open line of communication with most of my athletes, although some of the younger ones are still working on it. They still have to learn how to advocate for themselves. And we talk about it often with them. Like, if you're having troubles, you have to come to us. Super happy. I had a little one today, lower level athlete said, Miss Kathy, I'm really tired today. I was up late, or I had to get up early to catch a flight. Okay. And we have to listen to them, and the athlete and the coach have to work together and communicate so that we can move forward when the times are tough. Yeah.
And Akin, I'm curious as to what your thoughts are, what's your opinion? How should we work with those athletes that are dealing with things mentally? And it's not just Simone. Naomi Osaka talked about the pressures of trying to be perfect or trying to win, and just how tough it's been. You remember back in the day, Ricky Williams, he used to do interviews with his helmet on, and so there are other athletes out there that have taught. So how do we deal with that? What's your advice? And since you've been through it.
Yeah. I think let's go back 1 second. I commend and admire the athletes of nowadays, because what they are doing is really speaking for a lot of us who traditionally came up in a culture of where you felt the pressure and you felt that you were forced, or you felt that you necessarily didn't have the option to speak up due to culturally. We are a society that wants perfection, and we want what we want, and we want it now. And generally, you feel that you don't have a voice in that. So kudos to Simone, Naomi, and all the athletes who are speaking up for themselves. But I think we also have to learn to. I have a daughter, and as I'm raising my daughter, one of the things that I want to make sure that she understands is that whatever pursuits you take on, whatever extracurricular activities you take on, there's multiple facets of who you are as a person. Okay. Right. Generally, when let's take a football player starts playing football and wants to pursue a professional career, our society generally sees them as one thing, as a football player only. And what I'm trying to teach my kids and those in the students that I speak to and the athletes that I speak to, you are more than just this event or this activity. Your roots are grounded in more than just football, and you have to exercise all of that. Now, there's a time and place for when you put on this helmet, or you step on this field, or you're on this mat. This is who you are. This is who I want you to work towards. But when you leave this, you have to let go. And then number 2, and this is what helped me get through my struggles and my moments, was I lived in the moment. I had a coach, one of my favorite coaches, George Edwards. Him and I, he was my linebacker coach here in Miami. And we would go back and forth, George, Channing, Crowder, and I. But George was so great at helping me understand. And listen, I want you to do this. You have all these responsibilities. At the end of the day, let your instincts kick in. Don't live in the past. Live in the moment. And be here and be now. Don't worry about the distractions. Don't worry about things that you can't control, and be in the moment. And once I started to grasp the concept of being in the moment, it really helped me to let go, and it really helped me to get through those hard and difficult moments.
Amen to that, man. I really appreciate you and your thoughts. And Kathy, real fast, and before I let you go, because you kind of alluded to it, but as a coach, how do you coach all these young athletes without tearing them down mentally? How are you able to push them?
I think the biggest thing is reminding them to advocate for themselves. And Akin, I cannot tell you how much I love what you just said about reminding your children, reminding these athletes that you're an athlete when you step on the mat, but you have got to leave it at the door when you go home. Gymnastics is a sport, I think, more than any sport, that they fail every day. They fail every single day, and they got to pick themselves back up and go again. So they're learning in the process that it's okay to fail. Every failure is an opportunity to learn. I say it 1,000 times. So the part of the mental side is getting them to accept the fact that they're not perfect. It's okay. Move on, try again. We'll get there, and try to make sure they understand the process and enjoy the process of learning, because that's what it is. Nothing is going to come right away. And that's what we try to teach them in the gym, that you just have to enjoy the process. You have to trust the process. One step at a time, pick yourself back up, because those are life lessons. You're going to fail out there. You got to get back up. You got to try again. You got to leave your work. One day you're going to be older and have a job. Leave your work at work, go home and enjoy your life. Those types of things are really important. We try to make sure that the athletes learn that in the gym.
Amen. Kathy, thank you so much. Akin, I appreciate you, my brother. Very well said to both of you. And thank you both for your comments and what you do. And I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Boiler
Had
up.
fun. Thanks.
You got it. You got it. Well, of course, we got to continue the conversation with Dr. Delvina, who is a psychiatrist here in South Florida, because she helps bring everything into perspective. She is someone we have on the show quite a bit. Dr. Delvina, thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for bringing me back, Jawan.
You got it. Well, I'm sure you heard a little bit about what they were saying, and we heard from an athlete. We heard from a coach there. So we want to hear from you. Do you often see athletes coming in struggling with mental health?
Yes. Akin was just talking about something very important. It's called mindfulness, being in the moment, leaving the past behind you, not thinking about mistakes. Oftentimes, athletes struggle with mindfulness. It's essential for any athlete to perform, and to perform well. You have to learn how to block out a lot of external stimuli, including the ones inside of your head. If one disturbing thought sneaks in, it could compromise your entire competition, whatever that may be. And so we know with athletes, they're suffering from mental health disorders. In America, 1 in 5 people have some sort of mental health disorder at some point in time. And recently, the NCAA, they surveyed 37,000 student athletes. This was back in May. And they found that the rates of mental health concerns were 150% to 250% higher than those historically presented by NCAA student athletes. I know these are college athletes, Jawan, but this is definitely a reflection of elite and professional athletes as well. And we know from data amongst professional athletes that 35% of elite athletes suffer from some sort of mental health crisis, whether that's depression, anxiety, eating disorders, stress, as well as burnout, which is what I think Simone Biles was going through in Tokyo. She had burnout.
And are we doing enough, though? Are we doing enough to address some of these issues that you just spoke about? Because it was like the fact that Naomi Osaka spoke about it, it kind of brought everybody started talking about it more. And then Simone brought it up. So you think, are we doing enough? Are we talking about it enough? Are we shying away from it?
Yeah. Clearly, we haven't spoken about mental health disorders amongst athletes enough. There's still a stigma. We've talked about it a lot for first responders, for law enforcement, for military folks, but we haven't done enough for our elite athletes. And so I'm glad that Simone Biles, this young lady, was courageous enough to use the simple 2-letter word no. She said no. And by saying no, she really placed her team first. She knew that mentally she wasn't there, that she could not stay in the moment. Whatever it was, it might have been this COVID Olympics. You take into consideration all of the pressure that happens for elite competitors, but you also factor in the COVID routine, all of the paperwork they had to do, the extra paperwork, the QR codes, the saliva testing in the airport. So that prompted anxiety for a lot of people, I'm sure. The daily testing, the limited interactions, the quarantines, no family support, no support from loved ones, isolating yourself after already isolating for over a year. Little fanfare, which is what usually elite athletes depend on to sort of keep them motivated and keep them competitive. They didn't have all of those things. So I think we needed to do more for these athletes going into the Olympics, considering the year that we've had with the pandemic.
You know, it always starts with a conversation. I always say that. Always starts with a conversation. That's kind of how we move towards solutions out there. So what do you think needs to be done? What more needs to be done to make sure that the athletes get the help that they deserve?
Yeah, I think more athletes have to be very vocal and speak up and say when it's a mental health crisis or a mental health injury. Don't cover it up. You know, I think back in the day, maybe players would feign it was a physical injury when really it was a mental health crisis of some sort. We know that some players have spoken out. Kyrie Irving, I believe, recently spoke out and said he was going through something, so he pulled away. We know that Kevin Love during the NBA playoffs a couple of years ago, he could not compete because he was ridden with anxiety. Michael Jordan also had to sit out several games after his father passed away. We need more people to step up and acknowledge, who are athletes, acknowledge that it's okay to be in a crisis. It's okay that you can't always feel your best mentally or physically. You're going to go through things and have some challenges. So we need more people to speak out and be upfront about it and say that they're having this complication or this challenge. And we need to make it okay. We have to make it okay. We have to normalize it like we've done, as I said, for law enforcement as well as for the military. We got to get rid of this stigma.
And would you suggest that these athletes, if they are going through something, because right now I'm throwing up the hotline numbers. So if there's anyone out there, whether or not they're athlete or not, but if they're athletes, if they're watching this, they can go ahead and call. There are a number of resources out there available. What would you suggest that these athletes do if they are going through that, if they are going through something mentally?
Yes, man. You know what I say, Juwan, we got to be proactive and not reactive. If you're an athlete, if you're in college, if you're in high school and you're watching this, your life is basically, you have a lot more challenges than the regular person. You have the challenge of competing, and then you have the stress. If you're in the limelight, you have the stress of your public life and people seeing you publicly and judging you. And now we have all of the social media also. With these college athletes who are moving forward and they will start to get paid now, their family should assist them in doing this. They have to be proactive in finding a team of mental health experts or mental health professionals who can help them so that when there is a struggle or when they do find themselves in crises, they have someone that they can turn to. They have someone to rely on. You don't have to wait until you're in a crisis to see a mental health professional. Be proactive. Do it ahead of time. You deserve it. You are competing. You're a competitor. You're on the stage and people are judging you. So you're under a microscope. That's a challenge in itself. So be proactive, put people in place, and all the other things that we talk to people about. Of course, athletes exercise regularly. They're in shape. They're fit. So they have that down. But they have to do other things too, like learning to be mindful. Maybe take mindful classes. Maybe do some yoga, something different than they usually do. Maybe run a little bit more. I know that their diet is usually the best diet as well. So they have that checked off too. But find a support network, a circle of friends who are not judgmental, who understand, who support you. And again, find a mental health professional, put them on your team.
Hey, man, I love that. That is some great advice, Dr. Delvina. Thank you as always. We really appreciate you. You always add so much and a lot of good perspective for so many out there that may be going through something. We really appreciate you.
No problem.
You got it. Dr. Delvina, as always, great job. And I want to thank all of you for joining me for this very important conversation on athletes and mental health. Remember, the resources are there at the bottom of your screen. If you need help, do not be afraid to reach out. Just talk to someone because it could help you at the end. So I really appreciate everyone for tuning in, and just know that the resources are always there for you. Anyway, that's our time for now. Thank you so much for watching NBC6 Voices. I'm Jawan Strader. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook if you have a story idea, and you can also rewatch this show on YouTube and also the NBC6 Facebook pages. And before we go, remember, education is the key to success. If you believe, you will succeed. We'll see you next time. Have a great week.